This is just a quick word on section 2, some of the key points of the video don't address that we watched in class today. That dealt with God and evolution and creation and the soul and the image of God. So what we want to point out are some other important facts about creation and God. Right? First, we want to point out how God creates. And of course, God creates, according to what we know, all things out of a free act. He's not forced to, and that free act is love for us. Right? So that we can share in his happiness and show forth his glory. Now, we recognize that we have reason and God reveals things to us, right? Both the reason and revelation, kind of what we got from the video, agree that God is the creator of the world, right? Those videos all point towards a creator and evidence in science, and revelation points toward it in Genesis. Time begins at this moment when creation begins. All that God creates is good because God says so, right? We can see that. Remember, that was from the last chapter. Evil is the absence of God. God preserves and guides creation towards an end he has in mind. We want to talk a little bit more in detail of what this means. And the church supports study, again, what the video talked about, so we won't go much further into this, of the origin of the universe and man, and only rejects false positions that contradict the truths of faith when it comes to scientific study, right? False scientific study, erroneous scientific study. That's what the church rejects. Other than that, the church says study, right? Do science, and that's good, right? Faith and reason go forth together. Okay. So a little bit more on why does God create? He's not compelled to create. He doesn't gain anything by creating. Did he need to create? No, he's God. So creation is ordained to the glory of God. He creates out of love. So what does that mean? So when we share in his love and glory, we are achieving true happiness. We're fulfilling our purpose that God gave us. And of course, if God gave us a purpose as our creator, right, then that definitely is what fulfills us. Sun and moon example. Right? The sun shines forth light, but the moon, right, it shines bright. It's not shining its own light, it's shining the light of the sun, right? So we're called to shine the light of God. When we reflect the light of God, we're serving our purpose, right? Shining forth God's glory. Okay. Continuing on. Now, through human reason, we all know, and we've figured out so far in this course, that something can't come from nothing. And nothing's able to create itself, right? From the videos from last semester, there was no such thing as time before God created. Right? That when creation comes about, then you have the measure of change, which is what time is all about, right? Creation stories in Genesis convey truth. That doesn't mean they must be taken literally, right? This is what we're talking about again in the video. So again, the church supports scientific research into the origins of the universe, rejects theories that contradict the revealed truths found in Genesis. In other words, right, scientific research is good, erroneous research is bad. Now, reason and revelation say different things. Reason, right, we got all those reasons to God's existence. And revelation, we've got Genesis. Literal 6 days? No. Remember we talked about not a scientific book, right? Not telling how, right? It's not a scientific book of telling how God created. It's really all about telling why God created, right? Both, in the end, agree, right, and point towards the creator of the world, God, right? Which is what we've looked at. Okay, fantastic. All the stuff that God creates is good, he says in Genesis. It's very good, right? What we want to talk about here is that when we look at everything that God calls into existence, God continues to preserve it, right? Unlike the things we create, God's creation is completely dependent on him, right? It comes out of nothing, so it depends on God, right? So God pretty easily can say, I stop thinking about you, I stop willing you, you don't exist anymore. While God cares for all of his creatures that he created, right, special attention is given to man and woman, right? Because as we just saw in the video, right, we're not just material, but we have something that is spiritual. And if that's the case, right, then it's something that comes from not the material world, but the spiritual world. And who creates the spiritual world? Not the material world, but the creator of all. right? So that our soul then is not some thing that comes out of the material world, but it comes from God, right? So God cares for all his creatures, but we're created in the image of God, and that he gives us a soul, unique. Now, three big words about God and his creation: preservation, providence, and governance. Creation was not fully developed when it came, right? It wasn't just perfect at the very beginning, but we see a continual change, right? A movement towards something, right? So this continued existence and maintenance of created things is called God's preservation of the world, right? Preservation. Creation is dependent on nothing but God. It doesn't depend on some other material thing. It only depends on God. So God preserves the world. Providence. God has a plan for all creatures by which we're led to a certain purpose. We're moving towards something. That's called providence, right? The plan of God. And then governance is sort of the action of making that plan work, the implementation of that plan. God's action that leads us towards this purpose that he created us for.